Okay, we need to talk about the Alienware X15. So a month ago, I did a review on this guy here, the big boy X17. This was an all new design, all new chassis, new thermal system. For a thin 17-inch device, Alienware knocked this thing out of the park. I was very impressed with this product, and I think the overall reviews of this thing were highly positive. And as I did my review of the X17, I couldn't help but just be excited for this thing, because this is just the X15. It's the smaller version of that, right? It's just going to be the same kind of thing, but smaller. But it's not quite. So it's got some good stuff going on in it. I'll talk about that, but just up front, this is too thin. I think Alienware was trying to chase that trend of like these thin, light gaming laptops that I don't think Alienware is good at doing. They should have focused on what they're good at, performance. I'm going to start off on the topic of graphics. So the X15 can be equipped with up to an RTX 3080. The X17 can also be equipped with 3080. But this device here caps out at 110 watts. The X17 capped out at 165 watts. And the difference in performance is massive. Now, I understand that this is a lot smaller, right? It's a much more compact and portable device than the X17. But the main reason why this is capped at 110 watts is because they were trying to keep this thing super thin. So last year's M15, it's like the kind of predecessor to the X15, a little bit thicker. That thing ran at 140 watts, I think. If I'm not mistaken, either 140 or like 150 watts. It was definitely more than 110 watts. But the point I'm trying to make is that this is a graphical downgrade, a very noticeable graphical downgrade compared to last year's model. And it's only because they're trying to chase super thin. And even though the X15 is so thin, it's still a very big and a very heavy device. Like the Razer Blade with the same screen size is a lot more compact. Like, I love thin laptops. It's what I personally go for, and I'm okay with losing some performance to achieve a thin device, but it doesn't make sense to me to pursue thinness if the company has to keep the device big and heavy to hit it. Like, the X15 doesn't even fit into my bag, and that thing's designed to hold 15-inch laptops. Now, it looks really good. If I'm being honest, this is probably one of the best looking Windows laptops you can get right now, right? It's just like a really nice, sleek device, and the white color is right up my alley, right? But you can't help but wonder what they would have been capable of if they'd only added another millimeter or two of height, of like Z-axis, right? Even if they'd matched this thing, the X17, this is not a thick device by any means, but because it's a little bit thicker, it has a beefier thermal system, and it can make much better use of the exact same graphics card. And when you're paying this kind of money for such a high-end GPU as a 3080, it pains me to see it being crippled and held back by a brand like Alienware. It's so unlike what they normally do. Now, in terms of the CPU performance, this thing runs pretty hot. And if you compare it to the X17, I know it's a bigger device, but that thing's like a good 20 degrees cooler on the same kind of games. Now, they're both running 4 fans. They're both running that new gallium-based thermal paste. It's just disappointing to me because my hopes were they were raised, right? I saw the X17, I'm like, that's what this X series can do. That's what it's capable of. It can reach great temperatures with good fan noise, awesome performance. Why can't this? I'll tell you why. It's too damn thin. Now, I also want to draw your attention to the keyboard. So the mechanical keyboard on the X17 is not available on the X15. Apparently it's because this was too thin of a device, but the keyboard is good otherwise. Like the standard membrane keyboard has a nice feel to it. It's got the standard kind of Alienware layout. It's a good keyboard. The secondary function keys don't light up, which can be a little bit annoying, but you can change the colors of individual keys in the settings so you can more easily identify them in the dark. And then the trackpad also lights up. You can make it go wild if you want. This trackpad, I actually prefer it over the X17 in terms of the feel. There's something about the way that this thing clicks that's just a little bit more concise to me, but it is a little bit smaller. But Alienware usually puts small trackpads like this on their 15-inch devices. In terms of the screen, it's a 16:9 aspect ratio. Again, you don't get the 16:10 goodness that a lot of other brands are doing. I like this kind of screen size. Like when I'm playing games, I want this. I don't want that extra real estate. I think for people that video edit or for people that do work on a device like this, they would love that extra vertical space. But for a gaming device, I'm good with 16:9. But I did mention this, the same thing on the X17 review. If Alienware wants to extend this in the future, if they do want to start implementing bigger panels, they can't. Like there's just no more room on this thing to put that bigger panel, right? So they'd have to redesign the top panel, which would probably be expensive, which makes me think they wouldn't even do it down the line, at least not for a while. Okay, let's take a look at the inside. So the X15 runs 4 fans, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the first 15-inch device I've had in here that had a quad fan system. I've seen 3 fans, I've seen 2 fans, I've seen some laptops with 0 fans, but never a quad, I don't think. But despite having 4 fans and that new thermal compound, the thermal performance isn't amazing, right? We've seen what the X17 could do with something like this. Same kind of setup, 4 fans, new thermal compound. That had amazing thermals, like weirdly good. This is kind of average, and even the RAM is baked onto the motherboard because it's such a thin device. You do get replaceable NVMe's and replaceable Wi-Fi, but thicker would have been better, in my opinion. Battery down here is pretty big, 87 watt hours. Battery life was okay at around 5.5 hours, but that's with screen at 250 nits and all of the RGB lighting turned off. So if you want to pump all that stuff on, it's going to be noticeably less. But the AC adapter is really nice. On this system, you're getting a 240 watt adapter that's small and compact and very nice looking. And I think it's probably the best looking AC adapter on the market. I wish more companies would build stuff like that. But the speakers are garbage. Like, they're surprisingly bad. I had very low expectations, but somehow they managed to go below the expectations. They're just weak and super tinny. Okay, just to wrap this up, the ports, they're all in the back. I like them situated on the back here. It doesn't have a ton of ports, but I think most people should be okay. But my overall thoughts on the X15, like, it's a device that's very much Alienware in some regards, like the design aesthetic of it and the overall build of it. Like, it's well built and it's tanky despite it being so thin, but the performance element of it is just very unlike them. Normally when you go with this brand and you're paying that kind of money, you get great performance, but this time around, because they're chasing that super thin form factor, you kind of miss out on the performance. But if that's what you've always wanted, like a really brightly lit Alienware RGB device, and you don't care too much about like top end performance, this is fantastic. It's thin, it's really nice looking. That's what they're going for. But if you're a performance fiend, this ain't it. At least not this year. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. I'll see you guys next time.